So today we are going to be chatting to the amazing Lauren Scott. Now, Lauren studied music at Trinity College of Music, and from there she went into freelance musician across not just the UK but across the world, and of course a very in-demand freelance musician at that. Solo projects, duos. I've seen Lauren perform lots of duos, amazing. Ensembles, chamber groups, a very eclectic mix of different professional opportunities, which is really exciting. Lauren's also been the guest principal harpist with a huge number of orchestras. To name a few: the BBC Symphony Orchestra, the Royal Northern, the Royal Scottish National Orchestra. And that's really exciting. We'll be talking a little bit about that work with her later in this interview. And of course, Lauren, we all know her, don't we, for her amazing harp compositions. And Lauren has published 3 volumes of lever harp music for us all to get stuck into. And so I'm so excited to welcome her here and chat all things harp. Hello to the amazing Lauren Scott. Okay,
so
Lauren.
we're going to start this all again. So yeah,
yes.
Fantastic.
We are actually going to start this all again because I would like this whole video to be in one for people. So I will record a little lovely introduction to you, because wasn't my introduction beautiful?
It was lovely, but you know.
I'll record that and put it on at the start. But I would love you to just briefly remind, because you did tell us about the fact that you saw a harp when you were 4 and then you started learning when you were 6.
I saw a harp when I was 4, and I pestered my parents for 2 years, and they relented when I was 6. And at the time, because this was back in the 1970s, it was quite tricky for my parents to find and access where to get lessons for me. So they did really well, and I started, my very first harp teacher was actually a pianist, a lovely lady called Anne Ross, and she wasn't obviously a conventional harpist, and what she did was every week she'd write out a little tune, and that would be it. I'd go in and I'd learn my tune and then go in. So I didn't actually do any harp repertoire stuff. I just learnt a whole load of very obscure English folk tunes for quite a long time. So yeah, that's what my introduction to harping was, kind of not doing any of the classical stuff at all until I was much older.
Amazing. I love that. That's great. And then you were mentioning to us that you decided to study harp. You were just telling us about that when we had our problems there. But so you studied harp at the Trinity College of Music. So can you tell us how you decided that harp was going to be your career and what it was like studying?
Yeah, so I think I probably started my kind of journey from, again, going back to the 70s. It was very difficult to access anything really at that time. So it was very difficult to find out what was going on. Even though I lived in London, I was in a different part of London. It wasn't where all the harping was happening. And then eventually I came into contact with Sinead Williams, and she was absolutely fantastic. And she said, come and study with me at Trinity. So I went and had lessons. So I went to Trinity, and she was absolutely brilliant, and she really sorted out my technique. And I had a fabulous time there. It was an interesting period of time because there weren't many of us studying at the music colleges. Now, obviously, there's like lots and lots of harpists in each conservatoire. But at the time, there was only 3 of us, I believe, when I started. There was just me in the first year and a couple in the 4th year, and then they left. So I was actually the only harpist in the college for about 3 years, which is quite strange. So it meant I did absolutely everything, orchestras, and also we did a lot of inter-college stuff. So it was a fantastic time to kind of just really get grounding, do lots and lots of playing. I was like playing all the time, so it was fabulous.
Yeah, that sounds an absolutely amazing experience. And, some people don't have great experiences at college and university, but it's so nice and refreshing to hear that it was really, really a great time for you.
I think the fact that there were so few of us meant that we just had that opportunity to just get really thrown in. I mean, obviously, things obviously are very different now, and there's different opportunities for young harpists. It was an interesting time, and very much I was working outside of college as well as the Trinity were very good. They allowed me to go out and do external concerts. So it was all a bit of a blur, really, because I was kind of in college, I was outside working, and then next thing I was kind of travelling around the country working with orchestras, and I was coming up to Manchester a lot after I left college. And I was working with the Halle Orchestra for quite a while. And actually that's where I met my husband. We were on a gig together. He's a saxophonist, and we were doing Romeo and Juliet. And so it was really nice. We were doing that together, and I met him, and then I decided, either he was going to move to London or I was going to move up to Manchester. So I decided to move up to Manchester and then kind of stayed in the northwest. So I'm an honorary northerner now.
Oh, that's a lovely story. Thank you so much for sharing that. How nice.
Yeah.
So you just mentioned they're traveling around the country and doing lots of different things. And I know that you've worked a lot with a lot of different orchestras. I was actually reading on your website the huge list of orchestras that you've been and still are guest principal harpist with. I think we'd love to know what it's like to work with so many different orchestras. I can imagine each one has maybe got a different vibe. Like, how do you feel you've got to put a different orchestra hat on as you move through them?
Not well. I mean, I think the thing is, coming in as a freelance musician, very often you don't get the music a long way in advance. So I think you need to have quite good sight reading skills and being able to learn things very quickly, which luckily I do have that. It's an interesting thing, and every orchestra has its own dynamic, and it's an incredible, and it's a privilege to sit in a massive symphony orchestra and just be surrounded by this incredible wall of sound. I know it's wonderful when you see, you go to a live concert and you see this massive spectacle, but when you're actually sitting in it, I mean, it's really quite awesome. It's been an absolute privilege of my career to be able to sit and play so many fantastic, big orchestral pieces, and also doing operas and more intimate chamber music as well. So I very much enjoyed the orchestral side of my career. It's been great fun to do.
And do you have, so you're talking about, the big orchestra works. I just wonder do you have a favourite that you've performed, or a favourite that you perform regularly? Maybe you don't, but maybe you do.
I think every harpist has a soft spot for the Ravels and the Daphnis and Chloes and all that sort of stuff, which is just, and the Debussy. Yeah, I mean, I think that's every harpist's favourite thing to do. But I think I've been very lucky and fortunate to do a lot of symphonic work, so I've had a broad range of music to play, and I've actually found that as time goes on that I really enjoy perhaps the more intimate and the smaller, playing in the smaller chamber groups and things like that, and the kind of repertoire that involves. It's great to do any orchestral gig. It's just kind of fun.
Great to have a variety. And talking about variety, I'd like to now share a clip of some of your playing, and perhaps some music that people are maybe not used to hearing on the harp, a little bit different. So I'd love it after the clip if you could tell us why this music is important to you, and how it's shaped you as a musician today, and also just what it's like playing music like this. So let's have a little listen. I will make sure to share my sound. You just see it going wrong here as well. Here we go.
Yes. So that was a piece by Matthew Lomax, and it was with a contemporary group I played with called Safa Contemporary Music Ensemble in Manchester. Extraordinary collection of musicians, and what they had was they had a project with young composers. So they'd have a scheme where they'd invite young composers to write for that particular instrument, and I did a solo harp one, and that one was part of the flute and harp one. So we ended up with 6 young composers came to us, and we workshopped over about 6 months or maybe a bit longer. So we saw them several times as they wrote their piece, and then at the end of it, we then filmed and recorded the piece. So they were all very, very different in style, and I thought that was quite an interesting one because it kind of shows what, if you say contemporary music to people, that's perhaps what people kind of imagine. Really quite complex scores, doing lots of strange effects, and yeah, it's interesting, but it always comes from this kind of place of an interesting sound world. And I think when you're doing contemporary music, you have to be very open to just kind of to not go into it with a narrow, like, oh, this sounds strange, but just kind of just give it a chance and just let it flow, because usually there's always something interesting to listen to with contemporary music. And I think it's been a big part of my kind of journey as a musician, and yeah, it's been fantastic, and also just the technicality of being able to play that stuff. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work, a lot of hours to kind of, sometimes it's very mathematical, kind of just dividing up exactly where all those beats are going to go.
And I wonder if maybe some people who are signing in here perhaps don't know what a score like this would look like. Like when you're doing these things like running along the pegs at the top, or doing unconventional things at the harp, how are they scored? Is it dependent on the composer? Is there a standard scoring for these things?
That's a really interesting question. No, it depends what kind of the composer's doing. So sometimes you have the school of composers where you have kind of graphic scores, and there's like an improvisatory element to it, or you have the other side where it's heavily notated. So it sounds like it's improvising, but in fact it's all very intricately scored. And in that case, that was one of those where it sounded quite improvisatory, but it was all heavily scored. And part of the shopping process that we would do was we would then kind of, we'd discuss how to notate some of those things. And very often, everyone comes with kind of different ideas of how to notate the same thing. And you can't be a good old asterisk and then actually just writing out what you mean at the bottom. I think is always very, very helpful. So, yeah.
Nice. That's great. Thanks so much for that. So, we're talking about ways that we write music down, and I know that compositions become something that's really important to you, but maybe not something that you always explored in your musical career. Maybe you could tell us about.
Yeah, it's a very new thing for me. So it's something that happened quite late in life. Something, just when I was 48 when I first started writing music, and it was initially a response because I had students on lever harp who'd got to a certain level, and I kind of felt for the musicians who wanted to do notated music, there perhaps wasn't a huge amount of sort of upper intermediate and advanced level music. So initially it was a response to that, of me searching, trying to find more repertoire for my students. And I thought, do you know what, I'll have a go and see if I can write something. And yeah, it was just mad. It was just like a switch going off in my head, and I suddenly just started writing loads and loads. And I think in that first year I wrote about 13 pieces, which was absolutely mad. So yeah, it came really much out of the blue. Obviously it helps. I've come from that contemporary classical world, so that I've kind of sat amongst really good musicians, and I've know a lot of composers, and my husband's a composer. So although I hadn't done any composition up to that point, I felt I'd been kind of studying it in a way, just by playing it for quite a long time. So when I first started, I felt kind of ready to kind of just do it. Yeah, and I've just not stopped since.
Amazing. That's lovely. That's really nice. And do you feel like how do you identify, or maybe this doesn't matter, but I'm just interested. Like, if someone said to you, would you say I'm harpist and composer? Do you feel more of a composer? Like, do you even think about that stuff?
It's really interesting because obviously prior to COVID, I was just everything just been I was just a musician and I was just taking from one gig to the next and I never planned anything. And then I actively did more, and I think the teaching came first. Actually, I was getting more into teaching because I was one of the first early adopters of Zoom teaching. So it was more or less, I can't think when I first started doing Zoom teaching. I think it was about 2009. I think when we first got broadband, I first started doing it. And yeah, I think from the teaching it then got into the composing, and I now feel more like I would identify as a composer rather than as a sort of freelance musician, but I still do that. So yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, that's cool. I like that. Okay, I'm going to share another clip now of one of your compositions, the first of your compositions that we'll hear tonight. And it's a really amazing composition. I feel like you've really captured the kind of ethos of the title. So I'd love you to tell us about the composing process that you went through and just the whole project. But let's listen first.
Yeah, so that was my piece Sea of Stars from my latest album. And I wrote that back in 2020, just before COVID, because I was, things that we were supposed to do before COVID happened. But I was supposed to go to Australia to do a concert out there. And that was the whole idea of writing the piece, was that I'd go out there and perform it with the harpist out there. And so what you see me doing there is lots of all those extended techniques, and again that kind of comes from my sort of contemporary classical background, is kind of using sort of interesting using some of those techniques that I do in a contemporary setting, but in an accessible kind of framework. But with that particular piece, obviously I wrote this and then COVID happened, and I kind of wanted to perform it, and it was absolutely fantastic that I did the premiere with an online premiere, obviously because everything was online, with Eleanor Turner in October. So that was fantastic to do that. And then I recorded that for my album, and it's been a real privilege to play those recently. I've been doing some work with Amy Turk, and Amy's been playing the pedal harp and pedal harp part, and I've been doing the lever harp part. So yeah, it's great. And in fact, I've played this with a few harpists now, and it's always really lovely to perform it.
Sorry, I left you hanging a little bit there.
That's right.
Suddenly, because we've moved over to Zoom, suddenly I don't have William anymore to do all the technology. So I'm doing the sharing and the comments and the writing the questions and the everything. But it's all good. It's all good.
It's all good.
You're doing a great job. Everyone's doing a great job. I love that piece of music.
Thank you.
And I really feel like you actually take us to the Milky Way.
Yeah.
I wonder if you can talk a little bit about how you use textures. Like, your compositions seem to take us to like other worlds. And I don't know, is it just coming out your brain? Are you doing it purposefully? Are you trying to transport us in a way? Like, can you talk a bit more about how you do that for us?
Well, that's very kind of you. I don't really consciously kind of aim to do that. It's obviously that's just something what I do. I'm very inspired by nature, and I think when it comes to using the harp, I very much wanted to create a sound world. So that involves, using the whole instrument rather than just playing the notes with your fingers. It's all the sounds and textures that you can get from the body of the harp, treating it like a drum, and doing percussive stuffs as well. And I love finding ways that you can organically do that, but without it being insanely difficult. So there are ways to do that, and I think there's also ways to do that with scoring as well. Because I know some of my easier pieces that are written in my Adventure for Lever Harp series, I'm very, very mindful that I think as harpists we are perhaps frightened of the plucked string and the sound dissipating. Whereas I think there's a beauty in the space between the notes, and there's a beauty in the silence, and using the notes that you do create as a framework for that silence. And I think we're all kind of tempted to sort of think, gotta fill it, and actually no, enjoy it. It's a beautiful thing to let it hang. So I think perhaps what I'm not frightened to do is use that space of just let the notes and the harp resonate, because we play this amazing instrument with this incredible resonance, and that's what I probably try to do with my writing a lot, is just let the harp speak as much as possible.
And you do that as well. Yeah, that's lovely. I recently had the pleasure of watching you perform down in Cardiff. It was really wonderful, and taking a workshop with you, which I had so much fun at. And I got to experience using beaters and dragging them up and down the harp string.
Oh, my whale song. Yeah.
So how on earth do you find yourself in a situation where you go, I think I'll drag a beater up a string and see what sound it makes? Like,
wow, you should see the box of stuff that I have by my harp. It's mad. That I think came from doing a contemporary piece where I actually had to use some fishing wire to kind of thread between the strings, and it kind of didn't quite work. I didn't think it was very successful. But I also had to use the beaters, but in a circular motion. And it was just by accident when I was at home, I was kind of like doing that, and I found, it makes these whale noises. At which point I thought, yeah, come on, let's do this. And I did about 4 hours of just like making whale noises and just working it out. My dogs went mental. They're kind of used to it now. They're kind of used to all the different sounds that I make, but it's always nice having some sort of exploration time on the harp and just seeing what new sounds you can create. But I'm not a fan of kind of doing things just for the sake of it. So it's got to be a point. There's got to be a reason for it, rather than just shoehorning something in for the sake of it. There's got to be a good reason to use a special effect. But we are blessed with being able to produce so many, I think, on the harp.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So I want to take you back to a time when we had a conversation. I think it was actually back at the World Harp Congress in Cardiff, a different time in Cardiff. And you said to me, we were talking about pedal harps and lever harp.
Yeah.
And you said to me that playing the pedal harp is like driving a car, and playing the lever harp is like driving a motorbike.
It is. It's terrifying. It's absolutely terrifying. I mean, there's nowhere to hide, I don't think, on a lever harp. You just feel very, very exposed. And I think my journey with the lever harp was very much, I suppose, traditional of someone of my age, in that, I was told, if you want to learn harp, you start on a lever harp, you use it as a gateway instrument to learning the pedal harp. And that's what I did. So, as soon as I moved on to a pedal harp when I was about 13, that was it. I didn't look at a lever harp. I don't think I even owned one. And I just went through my career on that. And then again, it came back to when I started teaching, seriously started teaching. And then I kind of got back into the lever harp. And actually I got a tiny Kamek Bardic the 27 string ones, which was just absolutely, just blew me away. I thought, this is a brilliant instrument. Just didn't quite have enough strings for me, but it was fantastic, and I loved the sound of it. I loved the fact that it was really portable. You could take it anywhere, and just what you could do on it was fantastic. And that kind of reignited my love of the lever harp. So it's really interesting because I can sit down and do really complex stuff on the pedal harp, and that's fine. I have no issues with that. But I do a solo lever harp concert, and it's quite terrifying because it just feels very new and exposed.
I like that. I really love the fact that you're championing the pedal harp and the lever harp, because this is something that for me has been a big thing since, because I obviously have come from the lever harp side of things. Just recently got my rather stunning pedal harp behind me. Absolutely. But have often faced the kind of stigma of, well, a lever harpist isn't a real harpist. And I love that people are championing that both harps have got individual personalities and they share commonalities as well.
Yeah.
And so it's really refreshing.
Yeah, and I think not what I'm trying to do, but because I am a classical harpist, that's my background. I don't come from a folk background at all, and if anything, I come from quite a contemporary classical background. I think it's quite interesting, and maybe that's where my composition comes from, is coming into the lever harp, but with the respect. I absolutely respect. There's so many different styles of music that you can do on it, and that's what I really enjoy with the lever harp. Is I enjoy playing Bach on it, but I enjoy the more classical side on the lever harp, and I just think it's just got an incredible sound. Depending on obviously whether it's gut strings or the nylon strings, it could sound really luty. For me, it has more tonal possibilities than a pedal harp, which is probably not a good thing to say. But I think that just the range of what you can get on a lever harp is really exciting. Actually, the thing I really like about the lever harp is the fact that you can be slightly more chromatic, and the ability that you can change the levers and you can do a C sharp and a C natural at the same time, I think is really interesting, because I know people will say, the lever harp is not as chromatic, and I'm kind of like, actually I think it can be.
Nice. Yeah, I like that. That's cool. And this is a little side story, but I would love you to, just because it's funny, we've got quite a few Kamak harp players here, and I'd love you to tell the story about how Kamak sucked you and Alex in at the World Harp Congress.
Well, of course, they said, we went there and they said, would you like to borrow a harp? And we were like, yeah, great, let's borrow a harp. And of course, they presented me with this amazing Excalibur harp, which was just divine. And as soon as I played it, I was like, this is my instrument. It's amazing. And of course, Alex was also playing, and he found his dream harp as well. So, it was that thing of going to a conference and saying, I'm not going to buy a harp, and then going back and go, oh dear. So, I love my Excalibur. I've still obviously got my Starfish, which I use for my recordings, and which I love to play. I'm actually doing a side swipe. I'm just going to move my camera a little bit. This is probably going to all go horribly wrong. So you can see a little collection, and also my dog having a stretch there. I've been really getting into tiny cheap harps. So these tiny little 15-string ones. They're really the cheapest one that you can buy, really. And I just think, going back to my journey onto the harp and everything, obviously in an ideal world, we'd all start with a lovely instrument, but financially that's not possible for everyone. And obviously, the family background I came from, it was a struggle to get an instrument. And I think these 15-string harps, as a starting point to get people started on the harps, is, I think, they are okay. And so I spent the past couple of years, my project's been kind of like writing and adapting and arranging stuff for 15-string harps, because I think we need all avenues to these instruments. Obviously, you'd hope that people wouldn't stay on a 15-string harp and they would move on, but as a gateway for people getting into the harp, I think you can't beat it, really.
Absolutely. And actually, on that note, I do have some links of Lauren's that I'm going to share, and I know that you have recently been doing quite a lot of arranging for these 15-string harps because you sent a really nice newsletter with some links to some music in it. So guys, I'm just going to share the link to sign up to Lauren's newsletter because she shares great tips. And Lauren, maybe you could talk about some of the pieces that you've been arranging for the 15-string harp that people can have access to.
Yeah, so I mean, what I've written is I've actually written a kind of a program for like children from about 6-year-olds, so sort of 6 to 8-year-olds, to actually learn music. Instead of learning, say, like the ukulele as a gateway to learning music, actually saying, well, why not use these harps as a gateway to learning music? And so I've written like what is essentially a whole academic year's worth of music that can be taught in group lessons. And that's being trialled at the moment at a local school. A friend of mine is teaching that. So it's very simple. It's just using one finger. But it's more about learning music. But I have that as a resource on my newsletter. I send out little links and stuff. But what I've also been doing is just doing arrangements of different things. So recent one I did was the Girl from Ipanema on 15-string harp. Why not? And yes, there's some other things on there as well. Because it is possible. And actually, I wrote some duets. I wrote a whole load of duets actually for that as well. For that. For those instruments, it's quite a challenge. It's really hard because it's obviously, it's all in C and there's only 15 notes. But it's been an interesting challenge to do that.
It's great. It's great, like you say, to have things that are accessible. So guys, I've just shared the link to Lauren's newsletter for you to sign up. And I'm also going to share the link to her online shop because there's lots of great harp music there and some of the pieces that all of the pieces I would hope that you've composed for you guys to take a look at. So I'll share that just now. And maybe whilst I'm doing that, talking about the music that you've composed, your compositions are played by many harpists and lots of them are also on the exam syllabus. And I'm just wondering, how does that make you feel to have your music played by many?
It's such a joy. It's so lovely. And I got tagged into a link of a young girl playing one of my pieces, Caribbean Dreams, recently, and it was just like, oh, that's so sweet. So yeah, it's really lovely that people want to play my music. I'm very, very, very honoured about that. It's very
nice. Good. That's great. I'm going to share our final clip for today. And I know that this is a project which you're working on at the moment and touring with. And I'm really excited you're coming to Scotland and we won't have to deal with technology because you'll just be here in the flesh. That will be lovely in 3D. But let me share this music with everyone and perhaps you can tell us about your new friendship and what it means to you and the project that you guys are doing together. So here's the music. Wow.
The wonderful Amy Turk, harpist extraordinaire. So that was recorded with just like a single microphone, like right at the back of the hall. So it was probably not the best recording, but I just wanted to put something on YouTube to just kind of show me and Amy playing together and the concerts we did earlier this year. So I did a series of little solo concerts, just in small venues. Was it last year? Oh, I can't remember if it was last year or the year before. Not that long ago. And I did that classic thing when you're really multitasking and thinking and performing, and I was kind of thinking about what I was playing next, and I was thinking about what I was going to say, and I didn't check that my levers were set for the next piece. I mean, it's like, oh, I couldn't believe it. So, I'd forgotten to change my levers, and it was a fairly close key, but not quite. So I kind of got about 15 bars through, and then realised I was actually in the wrong key, and I just thought, oh, you know, I'm flipping a few levers as I'm playing, and then I thought, no, this just sounds like a dog's dinner. It's like I'm going to have to stop. So I had to stop and just say, look, I'm really sorry. I've not set my levers. Let's just start again. And then so I did that, and we carried on. And then I thought, well, thank goodness there's no one here in the audience that knows me, so it'll be fine. And then, of course, at the end, Amy came up, and she had been sitting at the back, and it was my first time I met Amy. I was like, oh. So anyway, so that was my first meeting with Amy. So I always remember, you know, just like set the right levers before you start. So we got chatting, and it just turns out that she'd moved 20 minutes away from me. So we had dinner, and we had good chats. We got on well, and we just thought, let's do some work together. And I had my album coming out. She had her EP coming out. And I thought it was, you know, it'd be nice to work together, because I think doing solo projects, it can be quite a solitary thing. And I thought, well, let's pool our resources and do this together as a project. You know, we kind of spur each other on and make sure that we were doing we're working on our own projects, but it was nice to kind of have someone kind of just to say, you know, have you done this? Have you thought about that? So that was great. And we had a series of concerts as well at the end of it. And that was recording the concert we did in Manchester. So it was great. So it was lovely to work together. And obviously she could play some of my duets, and I played some of her arrangements. And we've got some concerts coming up in Scotland and Carlisle, and I'll be doing, there's a fantastic duet she's written, Silver, which we'll be playing as well as some of my music. So yeah, it's really good fun to work with Amy. She keeps me on the straight, you know, she works me hard.
Good, that's what we like to hear.
Yeah.
Oh, that's really nice. So we've got some questions that have come in from people who are here with us. And I just want to say thank you so much to everyone for jumping over onto Zoom with us. There's so many of you here that it's so lovely that you guys came and joined us. And we've got some questions. So let's do some of these. So the first one is, how do you get lights on your harp?
Oh, well, that's not me. That's Amy. So she's got all she's the queen of all the gear. So she put them on my harp. So they are special LED strips. I think they came from Germany, but they're fantastic. But what you saw there, I mean, obviously there was the lights and they were the gels, but which we also have our own sort of lighting rig as well. And it just we wanted to, when we did the concerts, we wanted to make it look nice with those rigs. And we're using iPads, so we're not reliant on stage lights to see the music. Obviously, with the lights on the harps, it means we can see the strings, which is really good. And then we can just have these lovely gelled lights. So yeah, that's all Amy's work, not mine, I'm afraid.
Well, that's very cool. Looks very fancy. Okay, so this one, we might have to look back a little bit or get her to explain a bit, because there's a word here that I'm not sure if I can pronounce, but did you ever explore or workshop music with different things, such as workshopping music with guitar tabs, xylophone knoppel, I think is what it says, or these kind of things, and then use it in your work after?
If she means workshopping with other composers, well, there are some ideas that obviously have. I mean, obviously you take ideas from everywhere. I think a lot of the effects that I use, actually, I probably developed a lot of myself. But I certainly picked up on ideas from other composers. And yes, I think xylophonics and things like that. Yes, I do a lot of that, and I do xylophonic harmonics and lots of different experimentations with sounds. Some of the stuff that I do in the contemporary things, you know, you've got two schools of like different ways of playing the notes, and then different things that you put on the things. So you might put blue tack or attachments or card or things to the harp. And some of them I use, and some of them I don't. I like to use like paper clips on the bottom of the strings to make it sound like a bray harp, or kind of that buzzing sound. So yeah, I'm always open for seeing people doing different things and using them if I can.
Nice, great. Thanks, Lauren. Are the effects that you use with your harps, are they always mic'd up and using pedals and these kind of effects, or are they only played acoustic?
I do everything acoustically, so I don't rely on amplification for anything. I think for me, that's quite important, that it's all, oh, hello, just raised, he's just woken up, that it's for me, it's very important that the sound that I produce, you can hear from a concert level, and I write with that in mind. Obviously, if something is amplified, that's great, but that's not the reason to have it. It should, for me, stand on its own 2 feet and affect. It should be audible as it is.
Great. And talking about those special effects, do you have any recommendations for an intermediate player to start experimenting or dabbling in these kind of effects when they've maybe not done that before?
Yeah, well, in my books, I do use some effects. Let me just think. I've got some. There's a piece in my adventures book 1 where I think I've got things like paper clips and coils wrapped around the strings, just to make that buzzing sound. And I've got various effects that I do in pieces, because that's also one of the reasons why I wrote all those pieces, because I wanted them to be of an intermediate level but accessible, with special effects for anyone to do, but coming from a musicality point of view. So again, they're there for a reason. And in fact, the concert that I'm going to do, is this Sunday? I'm going to play a piece that's got a special effect that I use in that. So yeah, you'll see that then.
Exciting. And if anyone's interested in picking up the music that Lauren just recommended, I've just shared the link to her online shop in the chat, so you can head to it there. Since COVID, do you find that online has opened up the harp to more amateur players with a desire to play? And do you think that that's taken people away from wanting to learn classical music? I think she means because they're able to access so many different genres and different styles.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I think that classical music is possibly having a little bit of a crisis in this country. I don't think that's anything to do with COVID. I don't think COVID helped. I think that's actually to do with music education, and possibly the lack of in the UK. And that's also one of the things that inspired me to do this kind of very early years learning program, because for me, education is really important, just to get kids learning. Yeah, that's a slightly political comment, I think, because obviously, you could have this argument that perhaps classical music's being dumbed down, and then maybe, it's a self-fulfilling thing where you say classical music and then people confuse that with film music. But anyway, I think the more people have access to, and I think, obviously, I've been doing online stuff for a long time. I think, obviously, everybody jumped online with COVID, and I think that's a good thing. I think opening up the harp community around the world has been a fantastic thing, and I think it's been fantastic for people to all countries to get together, and I think opening up all different styles of music on the harp has been fantastic. And I actually think the harp community is a real beacon, of what a lovely community can be. I think it's fantastic, and I think everyone is very open to different styles, and that's really, really good. One of my dogs is probably going to start barking. Don't bark. He's got a terrible bark on him. So I hope he doesn't start. Behave. Yeah, the more styles of music, the better.
Nice, lovely. Talking about your dogs, we've got a question here saying, how did you meet your dog who looks very chilled and gorgeous?
Yes, he is. Is he going to come and say hello? This is the tiny one who's called Biggie. There you go. He's a corgi cross. And then the other one who's a big dog, but bless him, he's not very bright over there. Louis, I don't think he's going to come and say hello. Yeah, I've had them third. So this one is, how old is he? He's 5, and the other one is 7. But dogs are very new to us. We as a family, we've never, it's only a recent thing. A good friend of mine is blind, and she had a guide dog that needed to be retired. quite quickly because it was ill. And so we took her guide dog in, and that was our introduction to having a dog. Obviously, we were fooled into how easy it could be to have a dog, because obviously it was a guide dog who thought it was a human, and behaved amazingly. And in fact, I think she was 8 when we got her, and she lived, because she was ill, we didn't think she'd last very long, but she ended up living until she was about 14 or something. So we had her for quite a time. And then I think once you've had a dog, and then, we lost Amy, and then you have a little dog-shaped hole in your life, don't you, that you end up having to fill. So
yeah, we love our furry friends here in How to Bark. They're
exactly.
always welcome on all the calls every time. We won't mind if your dog barks. We'll love it. In fact, I used to get people back when Gypsy unfortunately isn't with us anymore, but Gypsy used to bark and quite often cough when I was filming. And I just was like, it's my life. I'm not going to edit the coughs out. So I just used to say, sorry about Gypsy in the background, guys. And sometimes there was a big interruption. And this one time someone wrote in the membership, when I'm watching your teaching videos, I'm just desperate for the dogs to interrupt so I get to see them.
Yeah, the dogs are lovely. I mean, they love the harp, so they're absolutely great. Although this one, my husband's a saxophonist, he doesn't like the saxophone. So when Andy's playing saxophone, he will howl something chronic. So yeah, they're very much harp dogs and not.
Oh well, they've got the right choice, haven't they? Yeah. Okay, just a few more questions from everyone and then we'll wrap things up. But we've got, do you still use a variety of types of strings on your lever harp? And who are your harp heroes?
Ooh, interesting. Yes, I do use lots of different types of strings. So this is my starfish harp here. There you go. So that's what I used on my recordings. I had a bit of I had a not a crisis, but I had a very particular sound that I was after when I was starting the lever harp. So in fact, I did some radical restringing of my starfish, which I know is it sounds like a terrible thing to do, and it was absolutely horrifically frightening to do because I didn't want to ruin this instrument. But I ended up restringing her with heavy nylon and sort of multi-filament wires and all sorts. And I love her. She's absolutely fantastic. I wouldn't recommend anyone doing that. It was really, really scary. Really, really scary. And Mark Norris was fantastic because obviously I completely messed up the intonation. And he was an absolute darling and he sorted that out for me. So an interesting project. Wouldn't recommend anyone to do that. Too terrifying. Just stick to the strings that the harp comes with. But I much prefer using nylon or carbon fibre strings on my lever harps. Very much so. Harp Heroes. I wouldn't say that I have a particular harp hero because I actually just love because there's just so many harpists doing amazing things, and I think that's it's always awesome, and especially the younger harpists coming forward. I absolutely love what they're doing, and it's just great in different styles of music. I suppose if there's one, if I was just going to name one, it's probably the harpist that I really admire because she's just done her own thing. She's just gone straight down the line. She's not deviated. She just does her stuff and she just does it all the time. And I think, my goodness, that's amazing. And that's Monica Stadler. She's never done anyone else's stuff. It's just her stuff and she just does her thing. And I think she's just amazing. So she'd be my harp hero.
Awesome. That's great. Nice. The last question from the audience is a perfect one for us to continue. And then we have a couple of last minute questions for you. But she's asking, what up and coming projects and performances are you getting excited about?
Ooh. Well, I've got the one coming up with Amy, which I'm really looking forward to. So that's coming up very imminently. What I'm quite excited, I've got some quite nice sort of freelance work that I'm doing, which is nice to do. But actually, what I'm really excited about is I was asked by a very good friend of mine, Alex Ryder, to write him a composition for a concert, a festival he's doing in Malta, and so that was a real honour. He wanted a big, substantial concert work, so I wrote that in August, and I'm absolutely thrilled that he'll be premiering it at this festival in Malta, and I kind of decided, you know what, I'm not getting any younger. I'm going to jump on a plane because I wasn't working that weekend. I'm going to just go to this premiere. So I'm very excited to put my composer hat on, jump on a plane, and watch a wonderful friend of mine premiere my music. So that's really exciting. So that's in a couple of weeks.
Amazing. That's so exciting. And how nice not to have to take a harp.
I know, it's really, well, it's a very early flight. It's a very early flight. We're not thinking about that. But yeah, no, it's very, very exciting to go with the composer's hat on and do that.
Yeah, that's lovely. And I'm just popping some links in the chat, everybody, because Lauren has got the concerts and workshops coming up with Lauren in Scotland. With Amy. Sorry, Lauren. You're Lauren. You've got them with Amy. Thank you. Coming up in Scotland, and I'm going to just pop a link in the chat there where you guys can find out information and sign up for those amazing workshops that are coming up. So, something that you are obviously very passionate about and you set up at home is bringing music to your local community. And I just wondered if, to begin to wrap things up, you might have some, you might like to tell us why that's so important to you, and then also maybe give us some tips on how we can help our local communities get involved more in music.
Yeah, I think community has always been a big part of just me as a person. For many years, I was chair of the UKHA, which is the United Kingdom Harp Association. So that was really interesting, kind of working with that organisation and just, helping to foster the community there in the pedal harp world. Because I suppose it is open to lever harps, but I suppose there's got more of a kind of a bias towards pedal harps. But I think that sense of community, and I think that's a really good thing. Obviously, internationally, we have this with the harp. In my local town, I set up a concert series, and we're in our 15th year now, and we do 8 concerts a season, and we'll have a professional artist, not harpist, just any musician. And then in the first half, we always have young students, young local musicians, and I think that's really important to foster the next generation. I think it's just vital. So we have this 30-minute spotlight concert, and then we'll have an interval, and then we'll have like a 1-hour concert by the main artist. And I've just been doing that for so long. I just think it's really important to kind of, we all rise together by just sharing and just supporting each other. And I'm just a great believer in, just give everyone a helping hand. So whether it's going to, just offering to help out if someone's putting on a concert, or just going to concerts. My goodness, just going to concerts is really important. I think it's really easy to think, it's, I won't go, it's dark, it's raining or whatever. But, it's good to do these things. And that's the thing, really.
Amazing. Thank you, Lauren. And of course, you're joining us in How to Harp membership this weekend and next weekend. So we would love it if you would finish up by telling us what we can expect from your concert. What kind of things are you going to be playing? And what are you going to be teaching us next week in your workshop?
Yeah, so I've got a range of music, some stuff of my own compositions. Also, I'm going to play a piece by Fiona Rutherford. I love Fiona Rutherford's music. And some arrangements in the concert. So that's been fun working out what to do for that. For the workshop, I was going to do a improvising workshop. So this is very much aimed at people who are perhaps a bit new to improvising, and it's just to sort of help gain confidence with that. And what we'll be doing is using backing tracks and basically learning Games of Thrones, but sort of working out how to improvise around it. So we're working from a lead sheet, but it's just a kind of like breaking it down and just giving confidence to kind of very simple, basic improvisation. So I think that's always a good thing, to feel less fear looking at the dots on the page and feel you can come away from that and just do your own thing.
Of course, that's great. I'm so excited about that, Lauren. I can't wait to get stuck in with you. And so I want to say thank you so much for joining us and for going through all the, third time's a charm, right? We got it right the third attempt.
Yes, we got there. We got there.
We got there.
Well done to you. That was
well done to us, I would say.
Stressful.
And of course, we'll save this recording and we'll put it up on YouTube. So everybody who didn't manage to jump into the Zoom will be able to watch it there. We'll make sure all the links are shared there as well, so that everyone's got access to all of your juicy music. And so all that's left for me to say is a big thank you to you. And I'm going to remove our spotlights. I can't do this on YouTube, so this is a luxury now. So that everybody here, we can move to gallery view, and everybody can show their appreciation to Lauren, who's been absolutely amazing. Thank you so much. Yay! Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. Thank you, Lauren, for being with us, and we'll see you on Sunday.
Looking forward to it. Bye.
Bye, everyone.